Let's continue factoring, and what we're doing with the next one is getting you to practice writing these trinomials. And just a reminder that as we do this, multiplication is commutative, so I would prefer foiling out, that you would get negative 2x and a negative 6x for that middle term to be negative 8x, and then your last negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 12. And then finish the problem by distributing. Now, if anybody wants to try, you're more than welcome to try distributing the 5 into one term first and then multiplying. And what you'll see is you get the same answer. But the reason why I like doing the problem this way is because when we undo this, or we start with this piece and go backwards, we want to do the GCF first, greatest common factor first. So that's sort of where we're going with this. I would encourage you to FOIL, and what you'll notice with the next one is, while yes, you have 4x squared, the outside would be positive 2x, the inside would be negative 2x, so they cancel out, and then the last term is negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. Don't forget about that 3 either. So as I finish this and distribute the 3 into the problem, we're at 12x squared. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. Same thing with the last one. If you FOIL that out, which would be my advice, the outside and the inside terms would end up being 14x, and then 4 times 10 is 40. But then don't forget about the 2x that was in front. So now when you go to distribute in, we're at 2x cubed plus 28x squared plus 80x. So moving on to the next task, what I'm talking about here is looking for a greatest common factor first. So that's why I did the previous problem that way, is you can factor out a 2 in this first piece. And now I think it's easier to identify that factors of 18 that add to be negative 7 would be negative 9 and positive 2. So our final answer, and you can just trust me on this, or you can check my work by FOILing it all out, is this, x minus 9, x plus 2 with the 2 in front. You might need a calculator as well. As I look at the next one, all of those numbers are divisible by 5. 14x. You double check with the calculator of dividing out of 5, but also taking the 245 divided by 5 is 49. So now when we look for factors of 49 that add to be 14, yes, it's 7 and 7. So what we can actually do, if you don't want to write x plus 7 twice, which would be correct, you could also write x plus 7 once squared. It's the same thing. If you look at the next one, greatest common factor first, 3. And if you're not very good, 192 divided by 3, you can go to a calculator. 192 divided by 3 is 64. And then here, I hope you would notice a difference of squares. We've done enough of these where that should come obvious to you, because now you can rewrite this problem as 3 and then x plus 8, x minus 8. That's the only way to cancel out terms. If you have a positive and a negative term, and 8 times negative 8 is negative 64. Same thing goes with the next one. We can factor out not only a 6, but an x. So you'd be left with x squared plus 6x. And maybe you don't know 96 divided by 6. Well, you can use a calculator. Is 16. And notice by factoring out an x, we subtract 1 from each exponent. So now when I go to factor, yeah, there's factors of 16 that add to be 6. So it would be 8 minus 2. So our final answer would be 6x, x plus 8, x minus 2. Next one's trying to get you to think of the same kind of stuff, where you could factor out not just a 7, but an x. And when you do that, you'd be left with 4 minus x squared. And double check my work. But again, we have another difference of squares that you could rewrite this problem. The square root of 4 is 2. So 2 times 2, the square root of x squared would be x and x. Make 1 plus, make 1 minus, and you have the final answer. Now this last one is probably the trickiest because there's a 4 that goes into all of those. So you're left with 2x squared plus 3x minus 2. And so you have to think about how it's 2x times x to give you 2x squared. Same thing with this one. It has to be 2 and times negative 1 to give you negative 2. And the way you have to factor that then, 2x and x, I want to make sure that my outside term is positive 4. That way my inside term would be negative 1, and if I FOIL that, I'll get back to that original problem. So this should be a good answer. So as we get to slightly more difficult problems, I don't know how difficult this really is, but it looks like 5 would be the best option for the next one to factor out. So you want to do that first. So now we're at 3x squared. Maybe you're not convinced what 110 divided by 5 is. 22. And then this last one would be 24. But what you can do next is, I'm going to show you a different method, and it's the AC method, where what you could actually do is multiply 3 times 24, which gives me an answer of 72. And what you can do with this 72 is you can find factors of 72 that add to be this middle number, negative 22. Now, they both need to be negative in order to multiply to be positive 72. So I'm just going to guess 6. I'm just going to think about 72 divided by 6 is 12. Okay, that's not good enough. So try 72 again, maybe divided by 8. Oh, that made it worse. 72 divided by 4, maybe. 18 and 4, there we go. So it's okay to be wrong. So what I'll tell students to do is leave the 5, I thought I changed colors. Leave the 3x squared and leave the 24, but rewrite that middle piece as negative 4x minus 18x. Sorry, I wrote down the wrong thing here. Negative 4 times negative 18 gave me 72, and those add to give me negative 22x. So now what I can actually do is, again, I'm leaving the 5 alone, but inside of this, I can greatest common factor an x out, 3x minus 4. And then here, between the 18 and the 24, its greatest common factor is negative 6. And what you'll see is if I distribute it back in there, it would be 3x minus 4 again. And the whole point of doing that method is because you could write in front the common factor of 3x minus 4, and then the other factor would be the remaining pieces, the x minus 6. And that is your final answer. And I can do the next one very similarly. And I'll do this all in green. I can factor out 2x, 5x squared minus 13x minus 6. And again, I can do the AC method of doing 5 times negative 6. All right, that's negative 30. Well, it would be 10 negative, nope, won't be 10 and 3, because that would give me a positive. It would have to be negative 15 plus 2. There we go. So if I did the work the same way, 5x squared, negative 15x, plus 2x minus 6. I can group these first two things together and see that its greatest common factor would be 5x, x minus 3. If I group the next two together, its greatest common factor would be 2 with an x minus 3. And so when I go to write my final answer, I still have that 2x in front. I write x minus 3 once, and then what goes in the other piece is the 5x and the 2. And that is your final answer. This may not make a whole lot of sense, but feel free to write down questions and bring them to class. Because with the next one, I don't think there is a greatest common factor between the three of them. So that would be my advice, is at least start with 8 times 24. And I might show you a new method here. So 8 times 24 gives me 192. And I need factors of 192 that give me 67. And I do need to add this time. So you could just guess a few numbers. Maybe you just guess 192 divided by 4 first. Okay, well that didn't quite work, so maybe 192 divided by 3. Oh yeah, 64 and 3 add to be 67. 3 and 64. Now, there's also this method called slide and divide. So what you could do is you could actually divide by this first number. Now, what you have to do is reduce those values. 3/8 and 64 divided by 8 gives me 8. So what we have as far as factors go is we kind of have factors written as x minus 3/8. And we also have a factor of x minus 8. But if you FOIL this out, you're not going to get back to the original problem. So what I always have to tell students to do is make sure you slide back. I don't know if you heard me say slide and divide. So we slid this 8 and the 24 together to give us that number. But then we divided. But then I always have students forget to slide back. So that's what I mean, is you have to put what's in the denominator back in front of the piece. And this might not make a whole lot of sense, but it does work. If I look at the next one, same thing. There's no greatest common factor. So what we can do is this slide and divide. So 12 times 3 gives me 36. And the factors of 36, I want to say is 18 and 2. Make them both negative. But what you have to remember to do is to divide by that 12. Slide and divide. Make sure you remember to reduce those numbers. 18 over 12 reduces to 3/2. And same thing with this other one. That reduces to negative 1/6. So what some students will do is they'll rewrite as x minus 3/2 and x minus 1/6. But they forget to slide back. So what am I talking about? Is we can't have fractions in here. So we slide it back to write it as 2x minus 3 and then 6x minus 1. And those are your correct factored forms. We have more practice with a lot of different things here. And so maybe what I'll do is just I think I can just share the answer key on these ones.